Welcome to episode 18 of Shane Talks. We're here to talk about the greatest television show that has ever been made. Well, in my top three at least. Definitely in my top three. But before that, we always start our episodes talking about beer, mostly Sun King beers. We're in the middle of Oktoberfest right now, so this week we're drinking Oktoberfest from Sun King. And because it's Oktoberfest, I made sure that I got the big boy out for tonight, so I'm thirsty while we have a lot to talk about. Now, since we start all these episodes talking about beer, one of our guests this week is I got to talk to my buddy Mike Owens, and he has recently started home brewing. So, in our conversation, we started off talking about his home brewing he's been doing. So, I want to tack that on here at the beginning during the beer segment of the episode. So, please enjoy me. I think it's like 3 or 4 minutes of me and Mike Owens talking about his home brewing process. Big Mike, great to have you on the show. Before we start talking about actual Firefly and Serenity, got a couple of other topics we got to hit real quick. First of all, on this podcast, we love beer. We drink a lot of beer on here. Been drinking a lot of Sun King beer recently, but tonight I'm drinking this American brown ale I got that came from somebody's home brewing. Why don't you tell us about your home brewing and how much fun you've been having with that?
I have had a lot of fun with home brewing. You're drinking the first one I ever made, and I would gather that 50% of that beer that I made was trash. But we got you into one that was carbonated, so
we did.
Luckily you got one that was good.
It tastes exactly like a brown ale, man. It's exactly what I expect from the flavor. So you hit the flavor.
Yeah, I realized after I made it and kept drinking it, what it tasted like. It tastes like Moose Drool. I don't know if you ever had the beer Moose Drool.
I have not.
And so it's I got it from Northern Brewer, and they make a few kits that are approximations of retail beer.
Sure.
And I was like, this tastes like Moose Drool. And I look at the name of it, and it's called Caribou Slobber. And I was like,
oh, that makes sense.
Right. So I've made and bottled three. So let's see. I made the American Brown, which you're drinking. I made an Amber Ale, which I had less carbonation issues, but I actually think the American Brown tastes better.
Good.
And most recently, I've bottled a pumpkin spice that, to me, is perfect.
Oh, good.
Every bottle I've had has been carbonated all good. I'm about halfway through that batch.
Right now is the perfect season for that flavor.
Yep. I got a winter spice ale that I brewed.
Ooh.
They started primary last week, and then there's a Belgian quad that's in secondary fermentation, and it's been in there for, I don't know, it's like 3 months total.
Sure. So and Belgians are my favorite, so I'm looking forward to getting a hold of a bottle of that.
I'm with you on that.
Oh yeah, we definitely bond over that.
So I think the next one I'm gonna make is they've got a dragon's milk approximation.
Oh, okay.
And I was trying to figure it out.
You gotta figure out how to do some lactose?
Yeah, it comes with charred wood chips.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
Like it would be a barrel.
Sure.
And then you soak it in your own bourbon, and then you put that in.
Oh, okay.
So apparently that gives you an approximation of a barrel aging.
Well, that's good. I mean, you'll have to let me know how that turns out. I'm very happy and proud of you for doing this home brewing, man. Like it's so much fun and so cool to do, and seeing how involved you're getting in it. Like I'm excited to keep trying all the stuff that you make.
Yeah, Maggie bought me the kit for Christmas, and then I finally got around to it when I ran out of things to do, because you can't really go do a home
sure.
these days. It's not a lot to do. So,
so there's a silver lining on COVID for this year. It got you into home brewing.
It got me into lots of old man backyardy things. So like homebrew is one of them. I built a garden that I then kind of walked away from after I built the thing. But there's some tomatoes growing in it, and nice. Then got a smoker, and I've been smoking meats this summer.
Oh, so those pictures are amazing, dude.
Yeah, I feel like a true suburban dad with no kids.
Well, keep it up. Don't stop doing any of that stuff. The next thing, before we get into talking about Firefly again, I want to address the fact that my Firefly collection has grown quite a bit in the last couple of weeks because of you. A couple of weeks ago, you sent me a Mal toy and a Jane toy, so I got to add those to my collection. And then most recently, you decided to send me another Jane still in the box, a Kaylee still in the box, a Wash still in the box, and a Zoe still in the box. So those I'm probably just going to keep in the boxes because they look great.
Yeah, I think the box ones actually look a little bit better than the ones that were on the card.
Sure.
So the Jane and the Mal, I think I can't remember the difference between the two. I don't know if one of those sets was a Serenity set and the other one was a Firefly set, but I think they were kind of two different series. But yeah, well, you guys
as you can see behind you, you don't have a whole lot of room other than Transformers and Iron Man sets. So I was very happy to take what you couldn't fit in there.
Yeah, it just doesn't fit the collection anymore. So that's mostly Transformer stuff back there, and then over here is the regular action figure stuff, and they're 6 scale. So the smaller stuff doesn't really fit. And I just, Lord knows, I don't have any more space. So I'm glad you would appreciate those.
Oh, I thank you so very much for them. I am so happy to add those to my collection. Yes, this will be a fertile episode. The dialogue will thrive in this episode. We will rule this episode, and we will call it this episode. I think we should call it the worst episode. Curse you and your negativity. Mine is an evil laugh. This episode will suck. Die! So we're going to talk about Firefly. A show that both Jason and I have loved for a long time. Goes all the way back to the original 4-disc DVD box set. The movie, the special edition of the movie. I'm probably one of the only people on the planet to own the HD DVD version of the movie.
Oh, you bought me my version, so
we have
2 people that we know have it.
Awesome. And I also got the Blu-ray during the wars between Microsoft and Sony, and then the series on Blu-ray also. And then I own all of this stuff digitally as well. So Joss Whedon's gotten a lot of money from me.
Joss is my master now.
So this episode is going to be all about the series and the movie. We're going to talk about all the characters. We're going to talk about the things that we enjoyed from the show. One of the main overall things that we're going to pick out of a lot of the episodes are a lot of the episodes had a specific character or two that it kind of focused on. So we're going to discuss those characters for each episode, and then we'll also kind of talk about Mal's overprotectiveness of his crew. Throughout the show, you see a lot of times where he will talk down to everybody. He will treat people like crap. But the minute that anybody else does that to one of his crew members, that's not okay. So we'll kind of address.
Well, it's kind of like it's kind of like everybody's family, right? So you're allowed to call somebody in your family a punk or an asshole or a bitch or whatever the case may be because it's your family. But the moment somebody else does it, it's like, excuse you, where do you get that?
Exactly.
You don't have that. You do not have that privilege.
So we'll talk about a lot of the times that comes up throughout the show. So the first episode, which the original pilot, which was called Serenity, was the 11th one that was actually shown on television. It was shown on December 20th of 2002, exactly 3 months after the fake pilot was shown on television. And well, let me just throw this out here real quick right now because this is going to be super important. If you haven't watched this show, major spoilers for everything ever involved with anything on this show, the movie, or the comic books. We're going to talk about everything. So if you haven't seen the show, I'm not even sure why you'd be listening to this episode. I'm sure you would skip it. But if you've seen parts of it or whatnot, and you don't want stuff to be spoiled, you probably shouldn't be listening because we're going to discuss it all. So the original real pilot that they shot, that Fox ended up not letting them show on television, they had to replace it with the train job, which is officially episode 2. It's kind of a half origin story because you've got a lot of the crew already in place, but then it shows you how Book, River, and Simon all end up on the ship and become part of the crew. The other half of the origin story is in the Out of Gas episode. But so this kind of just drops us in there. In itself can be kind of confusing, but definitely not as confusing as dropping us into the middle of the train job and having no idea what's going on. At least with the pilot, you get to see there's this crew of people. they've got some newcomers on there. Through the dialogue with those newcomers, you're able to kind of get a vibe and a feel for what goes on the ship. And then, yeah, then we get to the point where the reveal happens about who Dobson is actually after. It's a really fun scene where Mal thinks that he's after him, and he's like feeling like he's having a bad day. And then suddenly the reveal of he's after Simon happens. Probably one of the best moments in the pilot.
Yeah, one of my other favorite moments of that pilot is I didn't even realize it when I saw the pilot for the first time. Was I don't know if I was just not paying close enough attention or what, but the point in time where Malcolm is it's during the Battle of Serenity Valley, and he pulls out his cross and he kisses it and he puts it back under his shirt. Being somebody who, like, I never noticed that he did that, and then knowing what you know about him for the rest of the show and during the movie, you're like, he's got this contempt for God, and for people's beliefs, and but to see that, but then to rewatch it and catch him doing it, it had a totally different meaning for me than if I would have paid attention and noticed it properly the first time. But like, it was one of those little things that Joss Whedon threw in there that I was just like, when I saw it the second time or the third time that I watched the pilot, I was like, how did I miss that?
And like, I'm right there with you. I didn't catch it. I don't even know if I caught it until you told me about it, or definitely caught it later.
Yeah, like, it was one of those things. I think my brother Mike pointed it, like, when I said I hadn't noticed it before, he was like, how did you not notice that before? And I'm like, I don't know how I didn't notice it before, but it totally changes Malcolm's journey completely, for me, for that fact that he was somebody who believed and then became a complete non-believer because of the Battle of Serenity Valley. And,
at least that was to what it leads us to believe.
Yeah.
Like, there could have been something else that happened to him, but most likely that's why that was there, to make us realize that his losing that is what lost his faith.
Yeah. And so yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of the pilot episode, just because of the simple fact that it's a hidden nugget as far as I'm concerned. That, and what he does to Dobson at the end of the episode is just is just that moment of, like, it's
the Han shot moment.
Absolutely. It's and Joss Whedon has admitted to the fact that he's a huge Star Wars geek as far as that goes, and that Malcolm Reynolds is basically the Han Solo for his journey through space. So,
but yeah, with Dobson just walking straight up and Malcolm not missing a beat and just shooting him, and us thinking that he's dead until we get to the comic books, but yeah, that was a really good character. And then I was happy to see what they did with the comic books later, but we'll talk about that when we get there. But one other note that I had for this episode, probably one of my favorite lines of the episode, is when Kaylee is talking to Book at the first time, and she's basically like, how come you don't care where you're going? And then Book's response is, because how you get there is the worthier part. I kind of just enjoy that fact where Book is like, I just have a feeling that, like, I should be on this ship. And, like, it sets into motion, like, his story with this group of people.
Well, and especially him being a man of faith and a man of belief. So, like, you have this, the anti-Mal, essentially.
And they have the great conversation at dinner where he asks, am I allowed to say grace? And Mal's response is, as long as you don't say it out loud.
Yeah, like, it's pretty much it's a really good back and forth volleying about that subject.
For sure. So after the real pilot that gives us a fairly good introduction to most of the characters, shows us who they are and what they do, on September 20th of 2000, the second episode, or the redo pilot, because Fox ordered them to write and shoot a new pilot, was officially episode number 2, The Train Job. The opening scene of this is obviously what I and a lot of people saw for the first time, was the bar fight, which didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. I enjoyed the bar fight scene, but pretty much the rest of the episode, because I didn't really know what was going on, kind of just hurt my enjoyment of it. Like I didn't really get a good feeling for who these characters were, or why they were together, or why they were always bickering a lot, or like it just. I know I watched this one, and I believe I watched Bushwhacked, and after Bushwhacked, I just gave up on the show during its original airing.
Right there with you, man. Like I
Yeah,
watched 1 or 2, maybe 3 episodes, maybe. I don't remember watching 3 episodes, but I remember watching it, and I was a huge Buffy fan, Angel fan at this
sure.
point in time, ginormous. Like I probably made everybody else sick because I talked about them so much at that point in
Well,
time.
and I only started watching Buffy because of you, and then that was like why I was willing to give this show a shot. I was like, oh, it's more from the guy that did Buffy. I know Jason likes it. Like, I like Buffy. I should like this.
And I'll you know what, I'll tell the real quick story. But so I totally was on the same board with you. Only a couple episodes in, and I was like, I don't feel this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I dropped it and stopped caring and didn't pay attention. Kept watching Buffy and Angel because this
Sure.
was on at the exact same time. And but then I went to a Comic Con with I don't think you went to this one. I
Okay.
think this was 02. I went to a Comic Con for Joss Whedon, or he was the like main like the guest of honor for the whole thing up in Chicago. And so I'm in line waiting to go to a Q&A of his, and I'm sitting next to somebody I don't know, and we're all just, and it was actually a whole group, like 2 or 3 other people, and we were all talking about stuff, and then like they started talking about Firefly, and then like they looked over and saw my face, and they were like, "What? Have you not watched this?" And I was like, "Dude, like I tried, I couldn't get into it." And then they were the first ones to tell me how it was aired all out of order, and how if you like Joss Whedon, that you should watch him in order, and you'd probably be right in with this show. And I was like, well, maybe I'll do it. And then we were in that Q&A, and he gave, this is obviously after it's been canceled,
Sure.
and he gave, I'm watching this Q&A with him, and he showed a like teaser for the Serenity movie, and it had only like bits and pieces, because he was in the middle of shooting it when he came to this Q&A. And so like at the very
Q&A
end of
must
this,
Q&A must have been like 2004 then, since the
okay,
show was on at the end of 02. The movie came out at the end of 05. It was probably like summer of 04 ish,
okay, yeah,
probably.
I couldn't remember, like it was only my second Comic Con. I know we went in 2000,
Yep.
but I didn't remember when I went again. And so but yeah, so like here I am watching his teaser while he's shooting the movie, and it ended with this close up of her face when she's on the floor, and she's like, "Reavers," and like, and I mean, like the entire crowd exploded. um, so like it was just one of those moments of like that was actually kind of cool, and that's what hooked me into wanting to watch the series again. So, and then one of the guys at work had the whole series on DVD. I didn't, and he was like, "Hey, what if we did this jankety when everything was 35 millimeter,
Mm-hmm.
everything." You're talking about slide projectors,
Yep.
where the intermission entertainment, and then you had 35 millimeter projectors for the
Yep.
movies. So one of our employees brought in a home projector that wasn't much bigger than like a small suitcase, not even a suitcase, like a shoebox. And then we had to put it up on a ladder in the middle of the auditorium so it would fill the screen. And we had to buy these special cables, and we had to run the cables up to the booth. It was a jankety thing. But I think that's when you got into it, right?
That is
Shane?
exactly when I got into it. You told me that you guys were going to start rewatching it, and I was like, dude, that show sucked. Why would I want to come watch this? And then you told me your experience, and I was like, all right, fine. And I think your thing was, we're watching the real pilot episode first. Like, this is what the pilot was supposed to be. Come watch this and see how you feel about it. And it it it's bizarre how watching that hour and a half pilot completely changed my mind about the show. Had
Oh
they
yeah.
had they aired that first, I probably would have watched every single episode as they aired. But
Yep.
because I just didn't care about the train job very much, And I mean, like, in this last week when I rewatched it, there's obviously a lot of stuff in it that I do like that makes it a worthy episode, but not as an introduction to these characters. So
Oh, absolutely.
that first night when we watched, the first night that we all got together and watched that, it was the real pilot, and that's how you convinced me to come. And I was hooked from that moment on. I was like, I don't know if I can wait to watch this every week with you guys. Like, I might have to just buy my box set and watch it on my own.
Oh, dude, and I was so happy that I waited and that we were watching it in the auditorium, and something that I should have done since. I should have watched this entire series back on the big screen
That would be
again
awesome.
with full surround sound
Sure.
leading up to the movie. And it's something I intend to do at some point in time. So, sorry to interrupt and tell my little side story.
Nothing, not interrupting. All I was gonna say is my favorite part of this episode is obviously the end when Niska's people catch up with them, and he's like, "This is Niska's." Well, first of all, I really enjoy the fact that they're bad guys. They play them up as bad guys. They do the job. The job goes sideways, so then they get away with the stuff. But then you've got the Malin and Zoe are behind enemy lines essentially, and get to know the people that they just stole everything from. And it just shows you that Mal really isn't the big dickhead that he kind of tries to portray. Like, he decides the job isn't worth it, knowing who he's stealing from. So him giving the stuff back, he has a great conversation with the sheriff when they go and drop stuff off, and the sheriff was like, "I felt like there was something wrong with you guys. No harm, no foul. I appreciate you bringing the stuff back." But then when Niska's guy shows up, and he's like, "This is Niska's money. Give him his money back. We didn't do the job." And the guy, I think he spits on him or something. And so Mal just kicks him into the engine.
Oh, dude.
So good.
And it's the same guy. He's the Latimer from the program. He's the guy who's shooting up with steroids in the movie The Program.
I didn't know that.
And he's also he's that crazy white boy linebacker in Any Given Sunday that has like the paint on his face, and he's listening to like heavy metal music and throws the crocodile at all the other guys that don't like him or whatever. Yeah, like this guy shows up in all sorts of stuff.
So episode 3 is Bushwhacked. Bushwhacked is an interesting one for the fact that the character that I consider the main character of the show isn't one of the main characters. It's Commander Harkin, the guy that's interviewing all of them. I feel like he kind of steals the episode just because of the way he talks and interrogates everybody in the different scenes. I really enjoy his character and how that all plays out, and then obviously the end when he takes Malcolm back on the ship, and Malcolm
saves his life.
Yeah, well, I love leading up to Malcolm saving his life, where Malcolm's like, "Can you uncuff me?" So then he uncuffs him, but then recuffs him to the front of his hands, so he still really can't do anything. But then Mal ends up saving his life, and that's what gets him out of the Alliance that time.
One of my favorite parts of that whole show. I like that Malcolm's. You start learning about the Reavers a little bit in this show.
Yep, you see the Reaver for the first time.
Well, you don't really see him. He's not even a Reaver. Like he's attempting to be a Reaver. Okay. He's not a Reaver.
Yeah.
But Mal gives you this understanding that he knows about him.
Mm-hmm.
He's worried about him, and that he knows there's no saving them if somebody becomes a Reaver, there's no saving these people. But on top of that, one of my favorite parts is when Wash is getting interrogated, and he's like, "The legs."
He's just not taking it seriously at all. Yes.
He's like, "The legs are what does it." It's just like, it's such a Wash moment.
For sure.
And Joss Whedon does a really good job of finding at least one character where almost everybody can like fall in love and feel like that could be them. Whereas like in Buffy, I think it's definitely Xander, and then in Firefly, I believe it's Wash. Yeah. Like Wash is that guy that, like, at least for the male perspective, it's definitely like the I can fly and I'm awesome at it, but like that's all I do for the most part. And yeah, and so I really love, and it's Hawkeye and the Avengers, which is why we love
Sure.
Hawkeye so much. So
And I like the interrogations between Malcolm and Zoe also because he really beats down on them over the Battle of Serenity Valley and like being brown
oh
coats and like he has some lines in there that are like, May, you're really trying to push buttons with the things you're saying.
well, and he's like, you picked the wrong side, and he goes, I picked the losing side. Might
Not be the wrong
don't
side.
think it's the wrong one.
Yep,
And
that
it's
is a
just like,
great line.
oh yeah, like it. They one of the things that always works really well for me with Joss Whedon movies, except for Justice League, is which we won't. He's not a yeah.
Nope.
Never mind. That his dialogue flows, and I don't feel like it's overly complicated, but it's got a good cadence to it and delivery to it, and and to me, I can tell when it's a Joss Whedon episode compared to other people writing it.
Okay.
Not that they're doing a bad job of it. It's just that I can, after watching so much of his stuff, I know who most likely if he wrote it or not.
Much like Kevin Smith, I find a lot of Joss. It's true with Buffy also. I don't know Angel as well, but like I feel like all the characters in Buffy and all the characters in Firefly talk how we want to talk to our friends. Like rewatching the show this week, like there's so much dialogue that's like plays on words or like quick witty retorts or stuff like that it's like would I be able to think that up that fast? I want to think that I could. And it just flows so well together the way a lot of the characters in this universe talk to each other. And it's not even limited to the characters that are on the ship. Like it's characters they come into contact with and they're having conversations with, and there will be lines that are just like sly one-liners thrown in there, and you're like, oh, like I know what you really mean, like a double entendre or like anything. Like the dialogue is just it's how I wish I talked to people.
And I think a lot of it is somewhat how we talk to each other. Like I mean, we might want to take it up to the level that Joss Whedon writes
sure.
it, but for the most part, like a lot of it with those sexual innuendos or just like the small digs at people are things that especially friends and family do to one another constantly.
For sure. So that was Bushwhacked, the technical third episode that was aired second. The next chronological episode technically is Shindig, which is officially episode 4. However, it was aired as the 6th episode on November 1st of 2002. And real quick, we're going to take a cut to my buddy Jae Hampton, well, actually both of our friends, Jae Hampton, who is going to talk to us about why he loves this episode so much. Got my buddy Jae Hampton here with me to throw a little insight towards his feelings on Firefly. I love the outfit today, sir. My first tough question for you, yeah, brown coat baby, your favorite, or at least your favorite right now, episode of the show?
It's got to be Shindig. I love it. I love how Mal just he will consistently put somebody down, but he will never allow anybody to be put down in front of him. That's true. Yeah. That's why I loved the old gentleman who came up and saved Kaylee from those worthless women.
Yeah, that I really in my rewatching, I just watched that episode yesterday, and it is one of my favorites. Also, I just really enjoy, like, I enjoy the fact that he thinks he's protecting Inara, and like literally just has no idea what he's getting himself into. And then when he finds out, he's like, well, all right, let's roll with it. I guess this is what I'm doing.
I can kind of relate to that with women.
I believe that. So, like Jay and I were just talking about, my favorite part of the episode is just watching Mal get in over his head. Watching him not really know what he's getting involved in, and, like, he just thinks he's getting, like, into a fight with this guy that disrespected Inara, and then all of a sudden he's in a death duel. One of my favorite episodes of the show, obviously, we get the great moment with Kaylee where she gets to wear the pretty dress that she wanted, and then she looks smoking hot in that scene. And then it's really fun watching her in that scene while she's eating and talking to all the guys and like literally talking like a guy.
Well, not only that, but she's like stealing the room, right? Like the
Yeah.
guys are paying more attention to her talking like a dude about engines and spaceships than the other girls that are there to be just pretty girls that are supposed to be the eye candy of these people. So because of her awkwardness of being a mechanic instead of debutante, then like she ends up stealing the entire room, which is really cool. I also really love the part where at the end where like Malcolm takes the moment when Anara says, "I'll stay," and he's like, "Oh, wait a minute, you're not paying attention. Let me stab you." And then he's like, "I'm a better man than you," and he's like, maybe not.
Maybe not. I'm an okay
I'm
guy.
gonna stick you. I'm gonna leave now.
Yeah.
So, funny, Darkman is in that episode.
Yes,
the bad
he
guy
is.
From Darkman.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, he
is.
is.
We were just talking about. Was that last week or
I
2
think
weeks
so.
ago?
Yeah.
But yeah, they that was kind of funny to me that he pops up in that episode.
And this episode is one of the first and most prominent moments about the overall thing we were going to talk about, where throughout the entire show, he calls Anara a whore. He talks down about her job. He talks hellish shit about her being a prostitute. But the minute that dude disrespected her, he was like, "You don't do that to one of my people." And
you know, you start to see the love that he has for her.
For sure.
Like I mean, it's definitely because she's crew, but it's also because it's Anara.
Well, so. Yeah, I think a lot rewatching the show more and more times, he's got the 5-year-old boy on the playground mentality. He knows that he loves her, but he refuses to show it. So he does the exact opposite and feels like he has to put her down and he has to call her names and he has to be mean to her. But again, like a 5-year-old boy, it's because he just can't grasp the concept of I actually have feelings for her.
Yeah.
So that was episode 4 that was aired as 6th. Next, episode 5 was aired as the 7th episode on November 8th, and it's Safe. This is the episode that centers mostly on Simon and River a lot. In this episode, we get a little boy, probably like 10 years old, named Zac Efron, who plays young Simon for like 2 scenes. But this is the first one where we start to get a lot of. It's non-linear, which is obviously something I enjoy in storytelling, but we get to see a lot of what really drove Simon to be who he was in the pilot. Like, what caused him to get to where he is. We get to see the bond that they have as children. They get to see how much he worried about her because of the letters that she was writing. And then their dad is in this episode, who is William Converse Roberts. Not a super popular guy, but he was in the movie Kiss the Girls with Morgan Freeman. And then he was also Adrian Grenier's dad on Drive Me Crazy. So he's done some movies that I like.
Yep.
But yeah, so most of this episode involves, getting to know Simon and River's relationship and all that stuff. But the other most important part about this episode, aside from Simon and River, is the fact that this is the episode where Book gets shot. Book is shot. They actually ditch Simon and River because Simon and River get kidnapped in this episode. So they ditch Simon and River to go try to find medical help for Book. Anara convinces Mal to go to the Alliance ship. The Alliance ship literally says, "No, we're not going to help you. Like, sorry about your man being shot, but we don't care about you." And then Book stops him, has him scan his ID card, and they immediately change their story. They're like, "Get this man to the infirmary right away." This is a great story that gets played out in the comic book that we're going to talk about at the end, Shepherd's Tale. And the even better part about it is we learn through the comic book that it's because he served as a commander of one of the Alliance ships. But even more than that, he was a double agent for the Browncoats while he was doing that. Well, they were called the Resistance or whatever, what became the Browncoats. But the fact that his ID card is still good means that he never got caught. So I really enjoy that part of the episode and how it was cool when it happened, and then years later, reading the comic book and putting two and two together. Obviously, I doubt that's what they had in mind when they wrote the episode.
Yeah, probably not to that extent.
But being able to retcon it that way and like make the stories tie together, I thought it was really well done. And while we're talking about Book, we're going to take another second to cut into, well, we're going to cut back to my buddy Mike Owens. In our conversation that we had, Mike talked about how Book was his favorite character, gave some reasons behind that. So let's hear what Mike has to say.
But yeah, my favorite character is probably Shepherd Book. I like mysterious characters and I like their evolution. Obviously, there's 9 great characters in that show, but Shepherd Book is one of those because you just never really. He's such a good dude. Shepherd Book is clearly a good dude who knows a lot of bad things.
Oh, yeah.
And you really get to think that he's maybe like a reformed bad dude.
Yep.
Right? And then Serenity came out, and it's got Chiwetel playing the operative, and you're like, clearly Book was an operative.
Yep.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I agree.
That's what I was like, that explains it.
Yep.
Because in the episode where Book gets shot,
and they take him to the medical station, and he gets his card scanned, and they're like, get this man in here right away.
Immediately. They're like, immediately. And he feels no obligation to tell any of them anything about any of that shit.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you for that, Mike. Really appreciate your insight on Book. Wrapping up the episode of Safe, my 2 favorite quotes from it are when they're about to burn River at the stake, and the Serenity crew shows up, and the guy in the audience, they call her a witch, and then Mal goes, yeah, but she's our witch, so cut her the hell down. I love, he does, it's that dialogue we were talking about. He doesn't miss a beat. He's just like, yeah, but she's our witch. And then once they get back on the ship, Simon asks him, why'd you come back for us? And going back to our overall topic, Mal's response is, because you're on my crew. And Mal starts to walk away, and Simon goes, yeah, but you don't even like me. I don't understand why you came back. Mal stops, turns around, and repeats himself, you're on my crew. Why are we talking about this? And he just walks away. And it's one of those things where, like, Simon thinks that Mal doesn't like him, and he just hasn't gotten to know him well enough to understand he really does care for him and his sister. So, you got anything else you want to talk about during Safe?
No, like, it's a solid, fun episode.
Sure.
Well, and like you said, it gives you plenty of backstory.
It's fun to see. We've only really seen River be kind of crazy for the most part. When she does like her dance sequence, it's really cool to see her like being different from how she was.
Almost normal.
Yeah.
Like,
and then
relatable. When
they get kidnapped, and you're like, oh shit, these people are kidnapping them. But then all of a sudden, like, they get to the town, and they're like, he's a doctor. We need a doctor. And Simon, like, doesn't miss a beat. He just goes to work as a doctor for these people. So, yeah. Sorry to interrupt what I asked you if you had anything else to say.
No, you're good, man.
So that was the 5th episode of the officially 5th episode, 7th one that aired on TV. The next episode, probably almost everybody's favorite episode. It was what was aired 3rd on the Fox broadcasts. October 4th of 2002, we met Yosef Bridge for the first time in Our Miss Reynolds.
Our Mrs. Reynolds.
Our Mrs. Reynolds.
You're going to go to the special hell for that. Reserved for child molesters and people who talk at the theater.
Christina Hendricks knocks it out of the park in this episode.
She is absolutely, well, first of all, okay, like, she's
gorgeous.
A gorgeous woman.
Yep.
No matter what, right? But then on top of that, like, the very innocent, coy version that she starts out with, and then it morphs into what it does later. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense from the standpoint of, like, she was on a planet and apparently just waiting for somebody to show up so she could do this gig. Sure. And then these people were on the other space station waiting for her to show up with this gig. Who knows if it would have taken 8 months or 3 years. Like, that's my only issue with this episode is, like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense on
the speed of script.
The speed of script, absolutely. But yeah, like, this I think I might actually like her second episode more than the first one.
Well, and
Like,
I won't argue that.
but yeah, like and the quote that I just did, I know it was one of your favorites too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Is when Book calls out to to Malcolm, and he's like, if you take sexual advantage of her, you're gonna burn in a special level of hell, a level they reserve for child molesters and people who talk at the theater. Like,
yep.
And then he leaves, and then he pokes his head back in, and he's like, a special hell. And it's just that moment of like, yes, like this is, and it works so well for this. The whole episode just really, really well done.
Rewatching it this week, I realized a new favorite moment in this episode for me. One that I never really thought about before, but like really rings true to me. After when everybody is down in the room together, when she first gets revealed that she's on the ship and everything, and Zoe calls everybody in there. There's a point where Malcolm leans into Jane and goes, "How drunk was I last night?" And it's just one of those moments where, like, the first time we watched it, or some other times I've seen it, it's never really been that big of a deal to me. But, like, I watched that and I was like, man, I've used that line more recently than not in my life. And it's just one of those things where it's like, how drunk was I? And then in that same sequence, I like the fact where he keeps denying it. We're not married. We're not married. We're not married. And all of a sudden, Book's like, well, technically you are. Do you remember doing all this stuff? And it's like, oh, that was the marriage ceremony for whatever species or whatever was on that planet.
Yep.
The other scene that I really love in this episode is when Saffron is making food for Mal, and he's just sitting there like baffled, like she's cooking for him and she made him like apple cider or whatever it was, and Wash and Zoe are on the other side of the table, and like Wash is just so impressed with what like a 50s housewife does, and you just feel how pissed off Zoe is about it.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, like they're clashing during that scene is so fun.
And one of the other things that's really great is the whole is the last, I think it's the last line of that episode when Malcolm like gets really close to Inara.
Yes.
And he's like, you kissed her too. It's just that whole moment of like, I totally could see. I mean, yeah. I probably would have thought that too.
Yep.
Like, compared to, but once again, you get to start seeing the exposition of Inara returning Malcolm's affection in a way that, because she does the whole thing too throughout the whole thing, where she's like, I can't give in to this. I'm gonna fight it the tooth and nail. Mm-hmm. And then like the moment she thinks he's dead and she realizes he isn't, that's when she kisses him, and she's showing her love for him, and then all of a sudden all the craziness ensues. So it's such a fun episode.
It is. And Christina Hendricks just knocks it out of the park, like you said, being super naive and gullible in a scene, switching over to being a badass bitch, and then all of a sudden, like, running into another crew member and having to switch it back on to being sweet and gullible and innocent. Like, she does it perfect.
And on top of that, you have the whole, I mean, like, this was before she did Mad Men. This is before she did anything else that I can remember. I know I'm pretty sure she did stuff before this. Yeah. But this is the first one that I can remember her being in that I was watching. So,
yeah.
But yeah, like, fantastic episode.
The seventh episode, which was the fourth one Fox aired on October 18th of 2002, is the episode Jamestown. And I've actually got two things to cut away to real quick. First off, my buddy Tyler picked this as his favorite episode of the show, so I want to hear Tyler talking about this being his favorite episode. And after Tyler's done, I'm going to cut back to my buddy Jay, because Jane is definitely... it is Jay's favorite character, but there is nobody else I could picture in my friend group that is more of a Jane than Jay. Like, oh, actually, wait a minute. Before we cut to Jamestown, we got to jump back for a second. There was another very major character who was introduced in Our Miss Reynolds, related to Jane, Mrs. Reynolds, that we forgot to discuss. That's the first episode where we met Vera.
Yeah. So and not only that, but I thought it was really cool. You know, Joss, I think, is the first person that I remember making sure that there was no sound in space.
Sure, yeah, 100%.
Like I'm sure maybe somebody else has done it, but you always had like sound effects in Star Wars and Star Trek and everything else, and it's like, so
Yep.
every time they're in space, there's no noise in Firefly, so it's, I mean, it's pretty cool that they were taking that aspect to it. But
the
yeah,
fact that
like
they put the gun inside of a spacesuit because you couldn't shoot a gun
so they could shoot it, yeah,
without oxygen, like that was genius.
Yeah, that was a really cool moment. So.
Yeah. So now moving on to episode 7, Vera. Sorry, we forgot about you. Moving on to episode 7, we got Tyler talking about it being his favorite episode, and Jay talking about it, Jane being his favorite character. We'll be right back. All right, I got Tyler Berry here with me now. We're going to talk about his favorite episode, not necessarily what he considers the best, but his favorite episode is Jamestown, which is hilarious.
Yeah, man. For me, when you posed that question on Facebook about like what was your favorite episode, best episode, it's so hard to pick when it comes to Firefly because there are so few episodes to choose from. Like you'd love to think that if we had gotten 5, 6, 7 seasons out of this thing, it'd be much easier to pick the quote unquote best episode out of it. But for me, when you have to boil it down to one episode out of 13, 14, it's, for me, it's Jamestown, because honestly, it's probably got what I would consider the best humor consistently throughout, from minute 1 to minute 44 of that episode. It's one of the funniest episodes of a television show, especially a sci-fi based television show, that I've ever seen, especially when you boil it down to who the episode is focused on. It's focused on Jane, who's in his own way is hilarious, but he's also not the he's not the character that you think about when you go, oh, this is the funniest character. This is the character that makes me laugh on a consistent basis.
Wait, that has to be Wash.
It's Wash. It's Mal. It's hell, even it's Wash and Mal, really, when you boil it down. But when it comes to that episode, it's so focused on Jane. It really flips the script of what the rest of that show does and puts him in such a wonderful position to be something that he's not normally, which is not only the comic relief, but just the like overarching comedic focus of an episode, which is so cool. And it plays so well on those like old like folk songs and folk tales about like people who, when you really think about it, it's one of those like it's that old adage of like, oh well, these are these heroes we have, and we've learned that they're heroes because that's all we've been told. We haven't actually seen them be heroes, but we've heard this tale for hundreds and hundreds of years that it's just we're supposed to believe that they're heroes. And that's Jane in this situation. That's Jane Cobb, that's Jane's town, that's the hero of Canton. And that's what I love about that episode so much, is it's so funny that he starts to embrace it, but at the same time he's got this feeling of, well, I don't really know if this is true. Like it doesn't quite compute why I'm the one who is being revered this way. Like I love that episode. I think that's one of his best character development moments.
I'm going to ask you who your favorite character is, but before you have to answer, I want to say that I always associate you with Jane in my life. I wore the blue sun shirt tonight for you, but anytime I mean, you've obviously got the hat and the shirt on to prove my point about that, but the fact that he likes guns, the fact that he just says and does whatever he wants, I always kind of get that vibe and attitude from you in the real world.
And I agree with that. A lot of people, I love all the characters.
Sure.
I can't really just Mal. I love the whole leadership. I love the fact that he's got a a past that somewhat haunts him.
Sure.
I can relate to just about every character, and that's what makes the writing so good.
Oh, yeah.
But you're correct. I think Jane has to be my absolute favorite, and for one particular reason. He's the one with the most growth throughout everything.
Sure.
Now, a lot of people see him as just this brute, you know, and in fact, Adam Baldwin even called Jane, you know, his character was, what was it? Muscles, sex, and thuggery, something
Sounds
like that.
right.
Guns. But if you remember the movie, when they were coming down, he took the chance to buckle each and every one of them in and made sure of that. He's got something else besides. You know, they always think of him as this worthless throwaway character of just guns, you know, women, whatever.
Sure.
And I'm gonna. He has such growth throughout the series where he starts giving away his money. You can tell from just the letter on Last Letters Home, which phenomenal episode where he gets this head.
Yes.
He talks about his family, and when you grow up with shit, and you know his what was it the dung law that his kid brother falls in for, you can kind of see where he has just had to fight for everything. He's a little Tasmanian devil.
All right, great insight, guys. Really appreciate everything that the two of you had to say about it. I like this episode. I don't love this episode like a lot of people do, but I really love Drunk Simon in this episode. Just him babbling on and like, my favorite quote that I have written down for him is, you know, I've saved lives, dozens, maybe hundreds. I reattached a girl's leg, her whole leg. She named her hamster after me. I got a hamster. He drops a box of money, gets a town. Like, just Simon getting so drunk in that episode, which obviously then leads to him, you know, becoming the hostage in the situation. But, like, I just love the fact that he has such a problem with Jane that this situation that he finds himself in makes him decide to get shit-faced.
Yeah, it's also kind of fun because I like the song is awesome.
Oh, for sure.
The man they call Jane. But yeah, like
now I regret not finding a musical friend to reach out to record a video of them performing that song to put in this episode. That's my biggest regret. That sucks.
so,
Keep going.
but yeah, like this is it's not the best episode, but it's highly enjoyable. I like one of my favorite parts of this one though, besides the song, is definitely at the point in time where near the end of the episode he's like, what are you guys all stupid? Like nobody would drop money on you.
Yeah.
That like there's nobody that's like that. There's only people like me. And he was basically saying like, I'm a mercenary, I'm a hired gun, like I'm just trying to survive. Which is like the entire crew of Serenity, right? Like they're all just trying to one of the things watching it on Hulu, you also get like the introduction that they did.
Oh yeah, like previously
episode,
on or whatever.
Yeah, for the ADR like, you know, oh, this is what we're doing, and trying to explain it to everybody, so that because if you hadn't been watching the show, you wouldn't. It's like you find a ship, you find a crew, you do whatever it takes to keep flying.
Yep.
And like this is that moment for Jane, is like just explaining like, literally, I just want to be able to survive. I was just trying to steal money. I was not trying to help you people. Like I don't care about you people. But you have this entire town who holds him up to this highest regard because he accidentally dropped the money because he had to, or he wouldn't have survived. Like, so.
Well, and then just, even that side plot sub story with Inara is servicing the son of the guy that Jane robbed, and then that guy who was the bad guy president on 24, Gregory Itzin, also Paul Rudd's dad on Friends. He releases Jane's sidekick from the robbery, who he's been holding hostage for the last like 4 years. So that was kind of cool to just be like, oh, Jane's past is coming to catch up with him here. And then, you know, Jane gets really mad that the kid takes the shotgun blast for like in place of him. And it's like Jane just doesn't realize that despite what his intentions were or lack of intentions were, like these people still held him up.
Well, and how many times does that happen in history? Like, you would imagine that that's probably happened a whole lot, where somebody meant to do something else, and fortune or faith or whatever you want to call it ended up playing it out differently for the people who survived that situation.
Sure.
So, like, all of a sudden that person's a martyr, or a hero that never intended to be that for those people.
For sure.
So, like, it's just kind of it's just the way we rationalize things as human beings for the most part.
Yep. So the next episode, episode 8, officially, which was the 5th aired episode on October 25th of 2002, is my favorite episode of the show, because as you and everybody else knows, I love nonlinear storytelling. I know, this is brand new information. Out of Gas is my favorite episode. It's also Big Mike Owens' favorite episode. So let me let him tell everybody why it's his favorite episode, and then we'll be right back.
Yeah, favorite episode is kind of well, shit. Both questions are pretty deep, right?
They are.
And very loaded, because there's a lot of great characters in that show, and there aren't a lot of episodes, but most of them are great. I can think of the ones I like the least, but I can't think of a bad one, right?
Oh, for sure.
So for me, Out of Gas was the one that I mentioned, and I like some other ones too. Objects in Space, Our Mrs. Rain. The 2 episodes with Christina Hendricks are fantastic. But Out of Gas sticks out to me because you get, so the pilot, you get kind of the origin story, or kind of some of the origin story of Mal and Zoe, right?
Sure. Yep.
And then you see how, you don't get an origin story for Book, but you see how he comes onto the ship.
Yep.
And then you figure out kind of, Simon and River as you go.
Yep.
But what you don't know is, you don't know how Wash became the pilot of the ship.
Nope.
You don't know how Jane became the muscle, right? You don't know how Kaylee got there. They're just already established.
Yes.
So, and by the way, I like that. I don't, when you overfill a first episode or first anything with too much origin, it doesn't really work out.
Agreed.
So Out of Gas is the episode where they have a part break on the ship, and because he's, Mal wants to avoid patrols, and he's also cheap, there's nothing to replace it. So then he sends his crew out in both shuttles in opposite directions, see if they can find help, and he stays on the ship. And then, he gets kind of murked by some mercenaries over the part, and he spends a lot of his time while he's shot and bleeding reminiscing about how he came to be in this ship with his crew. So you see Mal and Zoe, and you see how they meet Wash, and Zoe's like, I don't even like the guy, right? And obviously they're married.
Right.
You see Kaylee join the ship.
Who wasn't the original engineer?
No, right? So she's sleeping with the guy,
with
right?
The original engineer, yeah.
And it turns out he didn't know shit, and she knows everything, so she's hired, and I think Jane's part of that is very funny to me.
Oh yeah, it's who's the highest bidder at this moment?
Yeah, exactly. And it was about sharing a room. I get my own room.
Oh yeah, yep.
Oh, you share a room with this one, right? And then he shoots him in the leg, and then Jane's very hungry, so he's talking about food. So anyway, you get to meet and you meet kind of these characters before they join the crew, and you get to find out more about how they tick, which you just never get enough of in that show because it's long enough. But that was really great. And then at the end, you really like the love that they all feel for each other at the end. Because he almost makes it back to press the button to call him back, and he never really does.
He doesn't.
But you don't really find that out until they're sitting there.
Yep.
He's like, yeah, I called you back, and they're like, nope.
No, you didn't. We came back on our own.
For you. Yep. And by the way, if the part wasn't there, they were all going to die.
They were all going to die.
They came back anyway. So, that episode gives me a lot of hearts.
So again, non-linear story, huge for me. I really enjoy it. I like jumping back. I like Mal being in a life-threatening situation that's causing him to reflect on everything around his situation with Serenity, how he met everybody, how his world came to be what it is now. I really enjoy seeing the original mechanic. Like the Kaylee flashback is one of my favorites. Seeing the original mechanic and like blonde-haired surfer boy douchebag that really doesn't know anything gets shown up by his girl that he's supposed to be banging once or whatever, and all of a sudden he gets kicked off the ship and Kaylee's got a job. What's your favorite flashback in that episode?
It's probably that, or I love it when he first shows Zoe the ship.
You paid money for this?
Wow.
Well, and he's got the line, once we get it running again, and she goes, it's not running now? Not so much.
Not so much. Yeah, that's that, and how much Zoe and Waj don't care for each other the first time they meet.
And his Magnum PI mustache.
Dude. And it had to be Magnum PI, right? Because he always wears those
Hawaiian shirts. So. Yep.
But yeah, it's got some really good moments. This is high on my list of favorites.
Sure.
I don't know, and see, it's really hard to pick a favorite with this show for me.
And I understand that. And
there's so many episodes.
Everybody that I've talked to has said the same thing. So I had to ask them what their favorite was at that moment. And it's definitely been understandable. I've watched the entire series and the movie in the last 6 days. I've been doing a couple episodes a day, and they are all fairly top notch. And the more you love the show, the more top notch every episode becomes. Even the subpar episodes, you find stuff in it that's really enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So moving on to the next episode, episode 9, which was Ariel, which was actually aired as the 8th episode of the show. So we're kind of getting back into a sort of order. It was November 15th of 2002. Ariel is the one where Simon comes to Malcolm with a job, with a heist job for them to do. Basically, Mal, Zoe, and Jane get to do a heist and steal a bunch of medicine from a hospital that's worth money, so they can make money. That hospital just happens to have a brain machine that he wants to use on his sister so that he can try to figure out what happened to her. There's a lot that I really like about this episode that probably watching it this time, I found more stuff to like this time. I remember when I started it, I was like, oh, I remember this episode. But as I watched it, I was like, there's a lot of stuff I really like in this episode, like when Simon actually saves the guy's life and just how condescending he is to the doctor that was about to let his patient die.
Yeah.
It's just one of those moments where, they're walking through the hospital, and, he says something about this is a hospital, and she's like, people are here to die, and he's like, nobody's here to die, and she goes, he's about to die, and, just Simon going into full doctor mode and realizing that this other doctor didn't know what he was doing, such a great sequence. And then even the other doctor's like, no, I didn't do anything wrong because I did this. And Simon's like, right, but you didn't pay attention to this. I was just like, man, that's a really intense and good scene when he saves that guy's life.
That's good. I agree with you on some of the stuff. One of the things that's kind of disappointing, and it's probably because we didn't get more episodes or more seasons, is the 2x2 Hands of Blue.
Well, for sure.
You hear that in what was that, episode 1?
Yep. It's the original pilot.
Yeah, the original pilot. So then you had it there, and then they don't show up again until this episode.
Yep.
And then they barely are in this episode.
Barely at the end of it, after everyone's already wrapped up.
And so, it's just one of those things where it's like, in watching Serenity, you can see where maybe that was gonna be somewhat the end game, maybe. At some point, or at least interwoven into the main storyline, what happens in that part of the story. But it definitely is kind of a letdown that we didn't get more of the two guys with the Hands of Blue. So
for sure, this episode also includes when Jane actually betrays Simon and River, thinking that he's going to get a payoff, only to find out that the law enforcement that he contacted flipped on him and decided to take the reward for himself and arrest Jane for harboring them. Then you get probably one of my favorite emotional sequences in the entire series is when Malcolm hits Jane with the wrench, throws him into the airlock. When Jane wakes up, that's a pretty emotional conversation between the two of them.
Yeah, they're about to go into Atmo.
And Malcolm is threatening to open the door and just suck him out into space. And the conversation between Jane, where he's just like, I don't know why you're mad about this. I didn't betray you. Going back to my overall thoughts with the show, Malcolm says, but you did. You turn on any of my crew and you turn on me. Since that's a concept you can't seem to wrap your head around, then I got no place for you here. You did this to me, Jane. That's a fact. Again, he sees Simon and River as part of his crew that people don't fuck with, even other people on the crew.
Yep.
And so, like, that is just a really emotional sequence, in my opinion. Like, their dialogue and Jane trying to justify what he did.
See, and you say that, but I think the more impactful part of that entire sequence with that dialogue between them is when Jane goes, "Don't tell him what I did."
That's true.
Like,
he says, "Make up a story." Like, yeah.
That to me speaks way more volumes than anything that Malcolm did, because and it was probably the only reason why Malcolm allows him to stay, is because of the fact that he said he didn't plead for his life. He just pleaded for his character. And then that, to me, like the fact that he was like, crap, I really screwed up. I shouldn't have. Please don't tell him what I did. And like, to me, that speaks more volumes to Jane's character as well as Malcolm's character with being willing to forgive him.
Sure.
Mainly because he is crew and he is family. So
yeah. I think it was a really good moment between both of them for all the reasons that we just said. So my next question for you is, did you ever read the works of Shan Yu?
I didn't.
Well, that's a phrase that's said a lot during episode 10. It's War Stories, which was aired 9th on Fox in December 6th of 2002. This episode focuses a lot on Zoe and Wash. Talks about their character. Wash, out of nowhere, in my opinion, kind of just starts to have this jealousy vibe going on about Malcolm and Zoe. And before we get too much into the episode, I'm going to take a break and let my buddy Tyler talk about why he thinks that Wash and Zoe, well, not why he thinks, why he considers Wash and Zoe his favorite characters on the show. So go ahead and take it away, Tyler.
God, for me, it's Wash and Zoe, and I will boil it down to the fact that before that era, before 2002, 2003, 2004, I'm not sure I had ever experienced a show with a good depiction of an interracial relationship, an interracial marriage, and being literally the product of an interracial marriage. Like, that was one of those things where you always want to see it, but it gets to a point where you're very surprised if you ever actually see it. Like, even today, like, as a 30-year-old man, like, it still is not common. Like, I look at a show like Blackish, which does a good job of it, of having a lead who's a mixed-race woman married to a black man. And then I look at a show like Mixed-ish, which is obviously a spin-off of Blackish, that is literally all about a mixed-race family. And that's wonderful. And it's just, but even in 2020, 2019, 2020, when that show first started, it was still just, it's still a novel concept for me to see that, even as someone who's lived with it for 30 years. It's fascinating that it's taken this long to get to this point. And Firefly was sort of one of the early catalysts of making something like that happen. So even though I don't think they really got to establish their relationship as much as should have happened, because again, 14 episodes, you can't really do as much as you'd want to do with that, but it was still so important for me as, you know, a 14, 15-year-old to see a depiction of a relationship that was something that I've lived with for my entire life, because it's normal to me. It's not a novelty. but in media back then especially, and even now today, it's still unfortunately a novelty in a lot of ways. So maybe not my favorite quote unquote characters of the show, but it's my favorite overall relationship.
All right, so we're back from Tyler's point of view. Great stuff coming from a mixed family. Really cool to see how he latched onto that in this show and made it a big part of like why he loved the show. So going back to the plot of it, Wash decides to go on a job with Mal in place of his wife because he's just fed up with them always going on stuff together because, you know, they've got their history together and like he wants to prove that he's like a man and can do the things that Malcolm does. Like it's a I need to be a man in front of my wife moment that Wash kind of has out of nowhere. I'm not really sure what brought it on.
I'll agree with you. It does come a little far fetched for everything else that's been going on with the character for so long. We don't see any build up to where like maybe he was being emasculized in like previous episodes to like lead up to this. It's just kind of like, oh, Wash, you never do anything like this. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. And then he's like, no, I'm gonna do it. I'm a man.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, I agree with you. It feels a little bit out of place, but once again, when you love the show, you tend to forgive certain things.
Sure.
So.
Well, and I mean, even forgiving that, there's a lot of things that are important with this episode. One of the I want to say lesser known things because it took me a couple of viewings to put it all together. During their interrogation, when Niska's interrogating them, Malcolm is only saying the things that he's saying to keep Wash's mind off the pain. That took me a couple of viewings to put that together. Like I didn't realize that. Like I'd always watch it, and I was like, man, Mal is just being a dick, and he is just saying some terrible things. And then once I put it all together, I was like, oh, he was doing it because Wash isn't used to being interrogated. He's not used to massive amounts of pain and torture and stuff. So he was doing it to keep his brain focused on, you know, my wife. I'm mad at Mal, like to give him something else to think about. I love that aspect of it. I love when Zoe shows up and she's told you only have enough money for one person, and she doesn't miss a beat. She says, "Wash, let's go." Like, it's a great moment for Wash being as jealous as he was through the whole thing. Like, that's her moment of like, you had no fucking reason to be jealous. Like, you're my husband. I will always pick you. I absolutely love that.
But I also think it's strategical because it's one of those moments of like she knows like Malcolm can put up with this a lot more than he can. Just like you were talking about, like he's helping him focus on the pain, off the pain. And he's focusing on anger, whereas like she's like, and don't get me wrong, I think a lot of an aspect of it is the fact that it's her husband, and she wants to be like, no, he's mine.
Well, like, see, the only thing that I think about is though, like when she's walking in, she makes it sound like the plan is giving them this money and taking both of them for this amount. So when Niska says this only covers one of them, like she doesn't miss a beat. She doesn't think about like. That's my only thing about thinking where like she picked Wash because she would have no matter what. But I mean, I don't know. That's just my interpretation of it. Another important part of this episode is we get our very first glimpse at Badass River Tam. She takes the gun from Kaylee. She looks around the corner. She sees where three guys are. She closes her eyes and shoots all three of them, one bullet apiece, kills them all. Kind of a badass moment, and you're just like, wait, what? Like, the psychotic girl can do this?
What did she say right after she did it?
Oh man, I don't remember.
And I can kill you with my brain?
No, that's that's
was
not...
that Ariel? She
no, it's with the brain. She tells Jane, "I can kill you with my brain," but it's another episode where Jane gets injured in the episode. He's in the infirmary, and she peeks her head in and says that. But it's at the same time where Simon also knows that he ratted him out. So Simon...
I think that might be this episode.
Is it this episode? Okay.
I might be wrong.
I don't have it down in the notes that it's this episode. The last thing... Well, the last thing that I have as an important moment, and I call it a funny moment, is Book, Kaylee, and Jane all see Inara come out of her shuttle with her female client.
The senator, yeah.
Yeah, and it starts the running joke of, I'll be in my bunk. Because Jane just looks at him, and then he just says to the others, I'll be in my bunk. My favorite quote that I have written down from this episode is where Zoe goes, Preacher, don't the Bible have some specific things saying about killing? And Book responds with, quite specific. It is, however, somewhat fuzzier on the subject of kneecaps.
Oh, that was Trash. Trash is
Trash?
the episode.
Okay, well,
Trash is the episode where...
the next episode we're coming up on. Episode 11 was Trash. It was aired 6 months later in July of 2003. This is the episode we were talking about where Yosef Bridge comes back. She has married another friend of Malcolm's. So as soon as he's talking to his friend, he's like, I want you to meet my new wife. They instantly both pull guns on each other. And this is one of those weird moments where I understand that Joss Whedon likes to write strong women characters like Buffy, but in both Yosef Bridge episodes, Mal is violent with her. He punches her multiple times. They have knockdown fights, and it's just one of those things that I felt kind of awkward watching it. Because like she gets beat up by Malcolm quite a bit. So anyway, I consider this my Ocean's 11 episode of the show. Go for it.
Is it where she says at the end, after shooting the 3 guys, that she says, no power in the verse can stop me?
Yes.
That's what it is.
Yes, she looks back at Kaylee and says, no power in the verse can stop me. Yeah, that's our first moment hint.
Because that's what Kaylee says at some point in the episode, I thought. Like, to somebody, as a joke. And then she responded. I thought she repeated it.
That sounds right. I can't say 100%, but it sounds right.
Okay. Sorry to jump backward.
So the Trash episode, I call it my Ocean's 11 episode. Because as you watch it, the heist is going on, things go wrong. You think as the viewer things are going way wrong. And then just like Ocean's 11, you learn that everything that was supposed to go wrong went wrong on purpose to get you to the scene where Inara flat out tells her, "Oh yeah, we planned all this while you were still, in the crate." I love the fact that she tries to shoot her with the Lassiter and it just doesn't work. Like, I think it would have been funny if it did work and did something, but I enjoy the fact that she was at least willing to try to kill her with it.
Yeah, she definitely does not like Yosef Bridge.
Yeah. So not only we talked about how we find out that she married another one of Mal's friends, but then when they finally accept the job with her and go do this heist to the Lassiter, you find out that she's married to the guy who owns the Lassiter also. And the best part is in that scene where they're stealing the gun, and I can't remember the guy's name, Duran Hamer. When Duran comes in, he's just like, all right, I got nothing. We were stealing from you, but I don't know why she's pointing a gun at me now. Like, it's just the dialogue where Malcolm is just so open, and he's like, yeah, sorry, we were trying to rob you, but I don't know why your wife, my wife, is being crazy now. That the 3 of them in that scene have some great dynamics.
I totally agree with you on that. That's and you got your bookends of the comedy bookends of the show for this episode, where Malcolm's naked at the beginning and he ends up naked at the end, being the same
scene. Yep.
But it's definitely entertaining. And do you know if Joss wrote this one?
I don't, off the top of my head. I don't have that written down.
I want to say he wrote Our Mrs. Reynolds, so I'm not so sure about this one, but
right. Yeah, it's as you said earlier, like this might be a better episode than Our Miss Reynolds, like as an episode goes, but Our Miss Reynolds is still a lot of fun and just so bonkers, like the situation and what ends up happening. But as far as an actual plot story goes, this probably is a much better episode. Episode 12 is The Message. It was July. Go for it.
really good. Like,
it is really good.
This is possibly my favorite. I don't know. Like, it's like I said, it's hard to pick one episode, but this episode is really good.
My favorite part of this episode, like of the storytelling of the episode, it obviously opens before they go get their mail, and Kaylee and Simon are in the
oddities
thing, and they continue something that's gone on through the whole show to have a very awkward attempt at a relationship. Anytime either one of them tries in any way, it just they aren't good at communicating with each other in a romantic way. They'll say things that are wrong, or like Simon more often than not says some really dumb things to Kaylee because he doesn't know what to say to her. So that happens in the beginning of this episode, and Kaylee gets frustrated with him like she does on a lot of occasions because she seems to be more the one to throw herself out there, and he's either too naive about it or not willing to like do anything about it at that point. So the scene that she has with Tracy, where it just literally feels like they're clicking, just is such a black and white for this episode. Like, it's so 180 degrees from, we've been rooting for her and Simon to eventually get together. It's the Ross and Rachel of the show. Like, we want her and Simon to be together. They're just too dumb to make it happen. And then suddenly you've got the scene with Tracy where they're just talking and laughing and getting along and everything seems perfect. And you're like, uh-oh, like, is this guy gonna take Kaylee from Simon? Like, I really enjoy that scene that they have together.
Until he kidnaps her.
Well, I mean, that's before he goes crazy. Let's see. It is funny that this episode 12 is when we get one of the most iconic props from the show to finally show up, and that's Jane's hat.
Oh, yeah.
Which, like, when you think about Jane, that's literally one of the first things you think about is his hat. And it didn't show up until this late in the series. The other enjoyable thing about this episode was Tracy being a character gives us more flashbacks and more insight into the brown coat days of Mal and Zoe and like their fights against the Alliance and stuff like that. So it's kind of fun to introduce that character that gives us more of their backstory while still moving the story forward in a way that it allows you to see. And Zoe brings this up in conversation with Mal, how they aren't the same people that they were during the war. That they've changed from who they were, whether that be for the better or the worse. But Tracy's gotten himself into something that they can't support. Like, he shipped himself to them because he thought that they would always be there for him and have his back. And, Zoe's
even when he's doing making bad choices.
Yeah. And Zoe's just like, I mean, he is who he was, but we can't help him do this dumb stuff that he's doing, leading him to, take the crew hostage and turn into a complete dumbass. It was good that they still got to take his body back to his family, obviously not telling them what he'd been involved in or anything, but he still got kind of a good send-off at the end of the episode. One of my favorite quotes from this episode is when Mal's talking to him. He says, "Everybody dies, Tracy. Somebody's carrying a bullet for you right now. Doesn't even know it. The trick is to die of old age before it finds you." I really liked that quote when he's talking to him.
That, and you also highlighted the other quote of when you can't run, you crawl. And
when you
can't crawl,
you walk.
When you can't do that, you find somebody to carry you. Like, I can't even imagine what people go through when they are actually in war.
Sure.
And what kind of relationship gets forged under fire in those situations. But this one makes you feel like you totally can believe this situation, totally believe that they care for this guy, even though he's making bad decisions. And everybody's had that friend who does something stupid, who keeps making bad decision after bad decision, where eventually you're just like, I can't help you anymore, dude. Like, no. It's not worth it. And so yeah, like that's probably my favorite part is when they're talking to Tracy as he's passing on.
Yeah.
And the other thing I really like about this, well, not really like about it, but when you hear the crew talk about this show, the final sequence in this episode was the last thing that they shot.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
And this was after they found out they were canceled. So they were like, it was a funeral for Tracy in the show, but it was a funeral for the show for them in real life. So it was their way of kind of like parting and being done with it and putting a final nail in the coffin, if you will. So, but yeah, I thought that's really interesting to hear that this was like, or maybe maybe this wasn't the last thing they filmed, but this was when they found out.
Oh, okay.
It was one or the other. I can't remember.
That's crazy. So after that, we're moving on to episode 13, which was the 14th one that was aired on television on August 4th of 2003. This is the last episode that Fox finally aired when they threw 3 of them on in the summer of 2003. This is Heart of Gold, focusing on Anara, giving us kind of an insight into her world. If I were to compare this to a movie, I kind of call it like the Seventh Samurai episode. You've got the crew showing up to a town / house of people that need help, and they're there to protect them from an outside force. I love the scene where Jane is talking to his hooker, and he's like, we start with these guns, and when this one's out, you're going to give me this gun, and then when I call for this, you're going to hand me this gun. And I just love the fact that he's like prepping her on the order of firearms that he wants during the battle.
The emotions that run in this episode are just for a long time I said this was my favorite episode. I don't know if it still is, but it's still like really, really well done. And like the Anara sequence when she sees Malcolm exit the room of her friend, like just totally like you're just like, oh, like you said, it's the Ross and Rachel. Oh well, no, you said Ross and Rachel were the Simon and
Simon and Kaylee.
Simon and Kaylee, but I feel like Malcolm and her more
I can see that.
Ross and Rachel, where it just doesn't seem to be lining up.
Yeah.
Whereas I just think Simon's clueless most of the time. So but yeah, like when she has her emotional breakdown after seeing that happen, like
and that's weird because she has that emotional breakdown after seeing that and comes to the decision that she's gonna leave the ship.
Yeah. Which
kind of is a seed planted for what ends up, carrying over into the movie.
Yep.
But yeah, so like that was just that what you just described was one of the scenes that I had written down as like one of my like wow moments from the show is like Mal makes a very human decision, which actually the beginning of that is hilarious too. When he first kisses her and he pulls away, he goes, I'm just waiting to see if I pass out. Like, I love how that's a callback to Yosef Bridge and when she kissed him and he passed out. Like, I love that. But Mal, and rewatching the episode, I was just like, don't do it. Don't do it, man. Like, you don't need to do this. Hold out for Anara. But, I mean, obviously it needed... Obviously, Mal is a guy who plays himself up as he does not want any emotional connection to anything. So he finally saw himself with the ability to get pleasure with no emotional attachment. And I feel like that's why he chose to do what he did in that moment. Plus, I mean, he may have died in the standoff. So my favorite quote from the episode is obviously the very end of the main part of the episode where the prostitute is given birth. She walks out with the baby and she sees the main antagonist on the ground and she says, "Rance,
who's the father of the baby?
Who's the father of the baby? Rance, this is Jonah. Say hi to Daddy, Jonah." And you're like, "Oh, all right, well, she's being okay." And then she literally pulls out a gun and shoots him. And says, "Say goodbye to Daddy, Jonah," and then just walks away like nothing happened. It's hilarious and jaw-dropping at the same time.
Absolutely. But the guy gets what he deserves, man.
No, for sure. He was a piece of shit. Like, he literally raped this girl into having this baby. So, like, he definitely deserved it. I do have written down my other favorite moment from the show is when they first get to the brothel and Book is there, and these prostitutes are coming up to him going, hey, do you mind leading a prayer service? It's been a long time since we had a prayer service here. And Book just being like so anti what they do is just so like, I don't know, or maybe, I don't know. Like, Ron Glass, like, kicked ass in that episode is like trying to be like, I'm not comfortable with any of this.
Yeah, totally.
That brings us to the last episode of the show, which actually aired 8 months before Heart of Gold, on December 13th of 2002. It was the 10th episode that got aired right before they officially got canceled, and that is Objects in Space, which Joss Whedon has always said he intended to be the end of the first season. So I guess he kind of got his wish in the fact that it was the last one officially aired, and then on the official chronology, it's the 14th episode. The first half of this episode, I feel like, is a huge setup for the film. Because the first half of this episode is River walking around the ship and then essentially gleaming into the minds of the people that she's around. She essentially hears what they're thinking in their heads, but it portrays it as them talking to her. Kind of just sets up the fact that she's a psychic for the movie, in my opinion. Whether that's where they plan on taking it for the movie, I don't know. When they wrote this episode, but I like the fact that it kind of plants the fact that she can read people's minds, and she's also an empath to an extent, because when she's in the hallway and she's watching Zoe and Wash making out in the pilot's chair, she's definitely feeling the sexual feelings of them making out with each other. So you kind of get the setup that we know that she's a physical badass with her shooting skills, but this kind of sets up that she's got more going on in her head than we ever knew before. Jubal Early, as we have said before, if Malcolm Reynolds is our Han Solo, Jubal Early is obviously our Boba Fett. His ship even kind of looks like Boba Fett's ship a little bit.
Speaking of which, the ship from Mandalorian looks like a ripoff of a Serenity or a
100% looks like a Firefly class. You're with the two engines on the side and I wonder if that's an homage to an homage to an homage.
Maybe.
But yeah, definitely the Mandalorian ship looks like it's a Firefly wannabe ship. But Jubal Early steals this episode. And so last night I watched Objects in Space and then the film back to back. Watching them back to back, I almost feel like Jubal Early and the Operative are from the same place. Their mannerisms, the way they talk, their lack of emotion, they literally could have been from the same place.
Yep. I totally. Whether Jubal Early is still an operative or not,
or was,
he might be on. I kind of feel like he might be on his own in that episode, and he's not really, like, he doesn't have them at he's more Boba Fett than he is operative.
He's more of a bounty hunter.
He doesn't have him at the beck and call the moment he snapped his fingers or whatever.
For sure.
But yeah, I definitely get that vibe that he's very much an operative.
Yeah, they are so similar in so many aspects.
Well, and Joss Whedon once said that if he ever got to make a sequel to Serenity, that his sequel would have Jubal Early surviving the end of this episode.
Which is funny because he literally gets to say the last line of the television series as everything is said and done on the ship. He's floating away and he literally just goes, "Well, here I am." And then the final set of credits happens.
Yeah, apparently that was something that Joss said if he ever got to make a second movie, that he would have survived.
That would be cool because I really, really like that character.
The problem is like, sorry, we'll finish and then we'll get into the movie.
Okay, that's fine. Another quote from this episode that I really like that probably was not put in there intentionally, but it works with what they did with the Shepherd Book comic, is when Jane is talking to Shepherd Book about still being a man and like you still get urges and stuff like that, and he literally goes, they didn't cut it off, did they? And Shepherd Book goes, no, they didn't. More or less, I'm still intact. That line, knowing that he doesn't actually have both eyeballs, is one of those things where, like, I like that line, and whether they knew that's what they meant with it when they wrote it, his line of, I'm more or less still intact, like, what else could that really mean?
Who knows?
But yeah, so, really, really enjoyed that part of it. Jubal Early was awesome. Yeah, I like when Jubal Early looks at Simon and goes, you folks are all insane. And then Simon's response, plain and simple, well, my sister's a ship. We had a complicated childhood. I really enjoy all of that. Oh, and then Wash and Zoe, when they're still locked in their room, Wash goes, Little River gets more colorful by the moment. What'll she do next? And Zoe goes, either blow us up or rub soup in our hair. It's a toss-up. And Wash goes, I hope she does the soup thing. It's always a hoot and we don't die from it. Like those are some of those lines of dialogue that I just think are just fun that were put in there for hilarity. So we've already talked about Jubal Early saying the last line of the show. 789 days after Heart of Gold aired, we were treated to the feature film Serenity on September 30th of 2005. Hence why we're releasing this episode on September 30th of 2020, 15 years to the day after this film came out. A film that's phenomenally awesome that we got a little more in the Firefly world.
It's really kind of cool. What I dig about this was the fact that I want to say that all 14 episodes that they got from Fox, that they were given a total of, I think it was $40 million to make all 14 episodes.
All right, so you're looking at a little over 2 an episode?
Yeah, and I mean, with all the CGI and being out in space, it makes sense, right? So you've got all that going on for it. Well, apparently the DVD sales went absolutely crazy. Everybody's internet buzz, like this was kind of the beginning of the internet and buzz happening on the internet. And so like everything just started like cascading on top of one another. And Joss came up with this idea, and he ended up going and pitching it. Fox didn't want to do it, but he ended up over at Universal, and Universal said, we'll give you what you had for one season to make your entire movie. So he had to make the whole movie on $40 million. I'm pretty sure that was the number that they gave him, but it was the exact same amount that he used for one season he got for one whole movie. And the amount of there's not much star power in this movie. Like out of the people that, besides who was on the show, what he pulled in, you're looking at Chewie Eltrafor,
who'd done Love Actually, but he wasn't a main character in it.
Yeah, I mean, and he wasn't. Yeah, he's never. Even now, I don't think he's like huge. He's good, and he's a bigger name, but he wasn't big at this time. And then David Krumholtz was the only other one that really.
Well, and obviously David Krumholtz, the 10 Things I Hate About You crowd, he was bringing them into this movie.
Well, absolutely. He played like this weird serial killer on ER, and he ended up it's really disturbing. He ended up like cutting some girl's throat. And, it's messed up. It was a really messed up episode. It wasn't one that I was expecting. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was one of those moments where like the whole episode's going, and then it was this cliffhanger, and he was just like some psychiatric like crazy dude in the episode, and he was in the ER. But then at one point, like this lady doctor walks into a room, and she's like checking on him, and then all of a sudden he just like, and she falls down, and she's bleeding from the neck, and she's like, I want to say she looks over and sees another dead doctor like right in front of her. Like it was really gruesome and gross and kind of surprising for that show.
Interesting.
But yeah, like
I mean, you are forgetting there was some major star power before she was major star power. The future American Horror Story staple of what is her name? What is her name? Sarah Paulson. Sarah
Yeah.
Paulson plays.
But she's been in some other stuff too.
Okay.
Before this,
When they go to Miranda, she's the hologram on Miranda.
And then you also have the teacher at the very beginning. Who she's been in some other stuff too, but again, like you didn't really have any star power in this.
No, not at all.
So what was really kind of interesting was when I started getting into this, I want to say it was right around the same time, like me and you start getting into this right around the same time.
Oh
yeah. One of my employees, the guy who brought the projector, his name was Paul, and he was telling me all about this. Well, I start getting into Firefly, I start looking into it and everything else, and then I found out like they were doing this special showing at UA Galaxy.
Okay.
And it was like 2 or 3 months before the movie was even coming out.
Oh.
And I went on and like I didn't find out about it until like a couple of days before it was showing. And I was like, "Oh, dude, well I'm totally buying a ticket." And I went, they were sold out.
Oh wow.
So I was really mad about it. Only to find out that Ron Glass sat in that auditorium with the people watching the movie.
Oh.
And did like a small Q&A with them afterwards.
No way.
Oh, dude. And what sucks even more is that UA, even when it sold out weeks in advance, apparently, kept it in one of like their small houses and didn't put it in one of their
seriously?
Like, yeah, like as a movie theater manager, like you and me, like I would have been calling somebody and been like, "You need to allow me to move this
to the biggest house, and then when that sells out, let me double show it in the house next door."
Yeah, like maybe it wasn't their smallest house, but it was their medium house. It was definitely not their large, and they didn't. And just that moment, I actually went on eBay and was thinking about buying my movie ticket from somebody on there.
Oh
but
wow!
It was like $80, and I was like, I can't spend that for a movie. Like,
yeah.
And at that point, I didn't even know that Ron Glass was going to be there.
Right.
Like it was just the fact that there was a premiere 2 or 3 months ahead of time, and like Joss Whedon, I think it's on one of the DVDs that we own. He did like some kind of introduction that was filmed and played before the movie.
Oh wow!
So thanking the fans because it was
Dude,
because of them
awesome.
that the movie got made. So weird stories that you get when you follow something so sillily.
That is odd. And so going back to the film itself, we lose 2 of the characters that were on the TV show. When the movie picks up, we've already lost 2 of the characters. We later find out that Shepherd Book is on Haven and has like a group of people that he's with there. We never really get to find out the story about what happened there. And
yeah, but I mean, but the other thing about Haven is that it's very much, it feels like it's a religious gathering.
Yep.
Or like a fellowship.
Sure.
Like it doesn't feel like he just it felt like it was his calling maybe or something to go there.
And and there's obviously still goodwill between them as the crew is welcomed with open arms when they show up. And then the other thing that I can't believe, the first time I watched the movie, as dumb as I feel for saying this, I didn't realize that Inara wasn't in the movie until she did her call. When she did her call, I was like, "Oh, Inara's. Oh no, I haven't seen her yet. She hasn't been on the ship." Like, I feel dumb for saying it, but I hadn't put together that I hadn't seen her yet. And that goes back to what we were talking about with Heart of Gold, where what happened with Mal and her friend literally pushed her away and caused her to leave Serenity.
Yep.
I also know at some point in time, and I don't know how much they've held on to this, Marina Baccarin let it slip that in season 2 they were going to reveal that she had been dying of cancer during the entire time of season 1.
Do you remember the first episode when she pulls out a vial and it has a syringe with it? And when they're worried that the Reavers are going to overtake them, she pulls that out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was always something that she's had since she found out she was sick, so that she could end her own life on her own terms.
Interesting.
Instead of succumbing to her own sickness. So I don't know if it was cancer necessarily, but it was definitely like some kind of fatal diagnosis of something.
As soon as I said cancer, I was like, ooh, I don't think they actually ever used that word. I think she had a terminal illness that was going to eventually cause her to die, and that was going to kind of play into like why nothing ever really happened with her and Mal, and then why she left. So once Inara does call and they show up, we get a great scene between Mal and the operative for the first time, where they meet face to face. But even before that, sorry, got to jump back to the previous paragraph that I had written. When they show up on Beaumont, we get the Fruity Oaty Bar commercial, which triggers River into a badass scene of beating the shit out of basically a bunch of people that didn't deserve it. Like, she starts a bar fight for no reason. Yeah. None of those people were doing anything or fighting in any way until she just started grabbing people and kicking them. Yep. So that's a really fun scene, which again foreshadows down at the end of the movie when she takes on the Reavers. But it gives us more of that River is really a badass.
Well, and I know some people who have issues with like whenever like females go on this ass kicking spree, because but Joss Whedon gives you good reasons as to why his female characters can do such things, right? Like, so like in Buffy, she's mystically altered so she can do things that no normal human being can. Willow in that series is a Wicca, so she can do things. But then you have this whole situation with River, and it's like, so if she's an empath and a seer, she should be able to read what you're going to do before you do it. And then on top of that, who's to say they didn't cybernetically enhance her or didn't give her some kind of weird steroids or whatever while they were doing all of their tests on her, trying to make her into the perfect weapon kind of thing.
And I will say this, testosterone-fueled hockey player Shane has been in a lot of fights in his life. But if you put me in a room with somebody like Gina Carano, I will stand zero chance. She will beat me to a pulp. But
I mean, like, River is a really small girl, right?
I guess so.
And so is Buffy. Like, they're very small, fragile, what look like fragile. I'm not saying they are. They look like the small female who couldn't hold her own, essentially, but they can, obviously, because they have extra abilities.
For sure. So, we finally get to understand the meaning of Miranda, and then the only thing, like, this is me being kind of nitpicky, and I shouldn't be, but with the whole mystique that was built up with the Reavers on the show, and then finding out that they've technically only been around for 12 years, because Malcolm admits that, like, this transmission happened 12 years ago, which means, and, the transmission is the birth of the Reavers. The fact that they've only been around for 12 years, like, I got the, like, mystique that they'd been around for a long time and, generations had been dealing with them. Again, it's me being kind of nitpicky, but I like the fact that that's what the Alliance is trying to hide, is the fact that they created the Reavers. But yeah, just that I don't know why they had to make it 12 years old. Like, why they couldn't have made it like a 40 or 50-year-old transmission, or like it had been around for a long period of time. I don't understand where they picked 12 years from.
With the fact that the mystique would have been like brand new when River's talking about it at her school with the other kids, which again, that might not actually be a full
that's even
memory.
A good point. Well, okay, well, that's true.
It could be something that she's dreaming or making up in her own brain.
But I mean, you make a good point. If that is a real sequence, and she's obviously around 10 years younger than she is now, like, yeah, Reavers would have been a brand new thing.
And if you're in the inner planets, why would you even know about them?
Right. So again, that's me being nitpicky.
Absolutely.
It doesn't really matter or anything. when the crew does come back to Haven, well, when the crew comes back to Haven before they go to Miranda, and we find out that Haven's been destroyed and attacked, and a lot of bad stuff has happened while they were gone, you get the scene between Book and Malcolm Reynolds, which goes all the way back to our conversation about episode 1 and them being like polar opposites, where Malcolm has obviously lost his faith. We'll later discuss how through the comics Book found his faith after events that happened to him. You have them coming head to head, and Malcolm goes, "I look to be bored by many more of your sermons before you slip. Just don't move." And Shepherd Book goes, "You can't order me around, boy. I'm not one of your crew." And Malcolm responds with, "Yes, you are."
Looks like you're about to cry, Shane.
Shut up, man. I'm getting a little emotional about this. My wife and daughter already make fun of me that a show like this can make me cry. Like, I don't need you to come back on me also. But the fact that it just proves, even after Book has left the ship, how much Malcolm still cares about him.
Absolutely.
Like, it's
which
just
is different, which is completely different, right, than what he dealt with homeboy from his brown coat days.
Oh, yeah, Tracy,
yeah, like he just completely, like, obviously, you know, like we said, that there's a reason maybe why Tracy was like allowed to be discarded compared to Book. So obviously Book was doing a little bit more nice things than Tracy
for sure. And then Book's death is one of those moments out of the entire series. We literally get a new version of Malcolm Reynolds. He is so beyond pissed off about what has happened. Like, it's weird that Book's death has affected him the way that it did. Because like you said, his wartime buddy that he should have been broken up about, I mean, he still does the right thing and takes his body back to his family and whatnot. But like, Book's death, we see a transformation in Malcolm. So much of a transformation that he threatens the rest of the crew that if they don't want to do what he does, they don't have a ride anymore. Like, if you're not a part of what I'm about to do, this is your port of harbor now. Like, he flips a switch and goes back to wartime now, I assume.
Well, and you know, there when Anara's talking to him on the ship, and she says something about going to war with him, and he goes, "I guarantee you'll see something.
You'll see something new."
Like,
yep.
It's like, yeah, Malcolm, and maybe it's that whole like.
That is so foreshadowing to this moment. That is so good.
Well, and on top of that, you have that whole aspect of, like you said, they're opposites, right? Like, Malcolm gave up his faith, and then Book has this faith, but like, it's almost like Book is this like guiding force for Malcolm to do good again and to be almost who he was to an extent, like, and then like that's kind of ripped away from him again, and so maybe he's just back to like, I'm pissed. Like, I like forget about faith and everything else. I'm done with that. Like, just people have got to pay for this. So yeah, it's just it's pretty crazy and, you know, awesome at the same time.
And obviously after his anger-filled speech with everybody, they go to Miranda, they do their stuff, they find out all the stuff from Miranda, and then we get probably Malcolm's most epic speech in the entire series plus movie.
Well, and my brother Michael pointed this out. What's really weird to my brother Michael was the fact that here is Joss Whedon, who is an atheist, who believes in communism to an extent, like as far as like everybody should be pitching in, and like very much maybe not communism, but definitely socialism is definitely more along the lines of what Joss Whedon seems to portray in his like everyday life, or at least his political beliefs on that scale somewhat. And then my brother Mike was like, I don't understand how somebody who is socialistic and atheist writes this speech. Like, this speech, it doesn't make sense to to him about the fact that this guy is a atheist socialist.
Y'all got on this boat for different reasons, but y'all came to the same place. So now I'm asking more of you than I ever have before. Maybe all. Because as sure as I know anything, I know this. They will try again. Maybe on another world, maybe on this very ground, swept clean. A year from now, maybe 10, they'll swing back to their belief that they can make people better. And I do not hold to that. So no more running. I aim to misbehave. Like, the camera work, oh man, I'm getting emotional again. Even more so, after he delivers this speech, as every crew member gets to say their 2 cents. Jane gets to say, Shepherd Book always told me if you can't do something good, do something smart.
Do something right.
Do something right, yeah. Like, every crew member gets to go around and throw in their 2 cents about why they believe in this. And yeah, so then we have the wonderful third act where Malcolm decides to shoot on the Reaver ship, pull them to go to war with the Alliance. And then after he starts that war, we get another emotional death. Oh man, I don't even know which one's more emotional. They're tied. We have a tie for the most emotional death of this movie with I'm a Leaf on the Wind, Watch How I Soar.
See, I don't know. I think Book might be more emotional because Wash, they hit you with it fast, and then they don't even give you the time to grieve. They literally flip to like running immediately because you do not have the chance to feel what Zoe's even going through or anything. Because like the moment he has to pull Zoe away from Wash and then they have to make their run for everything, it's just like you don't have time to grieve. We don't have that time right now. We don't have that luxury. We got to move,
dude.
So,
and then when Kaylee flips out about where's Wash, Zoe calmly says he ain't coming. Like, how like she has to be in denial. Like, I know she's seen death like in war, but like that was her husband she just watched die.
Yeah, but I mean, like, and she also is okay with dying too at that point. Like, during that fight,
yep.
They save her essentially because of the fact that she's doing things that she wouldn't do under normal circumstances.
She steps out of cover and walks straight towards the enemy, just shooting with no cover.
Yeah. So.
Oh man, yeah. Oh, sorry, I did get emotional for the last few minutes. It's a rough stretch of movie to talk about there. So in the end, I like the fact that we get to see Anara painting the new Serenity logo on the ship. I feel like that says Anara has made the decision to come back to the ship. It in my personal opinion, gives me the closure that she's back. In the same montage sequence, I enjoy where Malcolm asks Zoe about the ship, but her response is kind of more metaphorical about herself, where she says she's torn up plenty, but she'll fly true. I thought that was a great line, again, metaphorically. And then something we have waited 14 episodes and an entire movie to see happen. Simon and Kaylee finally get to have sex at the end of Serenity.
With his sisters weirdly looking at them while they do that.
Well, I mean, I wasn't going to bring that up, but you're not wrong. But yeah. So, that is 14 episodes and a movie worth of awesome storytelling, character development, awesome characters that Joss and the others wrote and put in this series. And then we're not done. Yeah, get ready. Hold on. We've got a lot more story to tell. First of all, well, yeah, there's a lot. First of all was the comic book Those Left Behind that was released in July of 2005. This is the one that brings back Lawrence Dobb, who was in the pilot episode, where we find out he is now working with the Hands of Blue. He came in contact with them at some point and created a story, or not a story, a plot of how they could get the Tams and he could get to kill Malcolm. So they started working together. So that's a mini series. I don't know how many pages it is. It doesn't have page numbers, so I mean, like it's a decent book of stuff. It's a good story.
I think it was like 3 or 4 issue series.
Was it? Oh, okay. I only have the paperback or the trade version of it. Next up was Better Days. That was released in March of 2008. This series takes place between objects in space in the film. The crew is still together. It involves an art heist. I don't own this comic book. I own it digitally, but I don't have a comic to show. It involves an art heist. The second episode, they go to a luxury hotel when they're like getting paid for doing the art heist. And then while they're at the luxury hotel, they all tell stories about what they would do if they were actually like rich enough to, go to one of these places normally. The third episode involves them getting betrayed and the money getting stolen from them. And it ends with a kind of funny sequence where Malcolm's not even mad that the money is getting stolen. And Inara has this moment where she's like, oh, you don't really care about any of these fantasies that everybody else has because you're literally living your fantasy like already. Like it's one of those things where like it's kind of trying to say that Malcolm was never really in it for the money. So that was a fun story. I don't have the other half physically. That was in August of 2008. The crew are hired to protect a guy from a Reaver attack. While they're protecting him, he figures out who the Tams are, so he pulls a gun on River to try to get the reward for the Tams. River ends up killing him. After she kills him and they get back to the ship, Malcolm is like, that's why I had you hanging out with him, because I didn't trust him and I knew, if anything went wrong, you could handle yourself. So it was kind of one of those moments where Malcolm purposely put them together. Apparently I don't have Float Out either. Float Out was June of 2010. This one was written by Patton Oswalt.
Yep.
I own this one digitally. I know because I've read it a couple of times. This is the one Patton Oswalt wrote. It's set after Wash has died, but 3 of Wash's friends get together to have like a drinking commiserating party, and they all tell stories about Wash. So it's like 3 flashbacks that you get of their time with Wash. I think even before he was with the Firefly crew.
Yeah.
And then I want to say that issue ends at the very end with Zoe showing up with their child, I think. Because those 3 guys were like building a new ship and they were like christening it in Wash's name, and so Zoe shows up at the very end of it with her and Wash's baby. Next up on November 3rd of 2010, we got The Shepherd's Tale, which is getting blown out by my light. Shepherd's Tale is probably my favorite of all the comic books they've ever done. Again, it's told non-linear. It's told backwards, where literally the first 2 chapters are actually scenes that we've seen in the movies, the movie and the TV series, and then we keep jumping back and finding out more about who Book was. You find out that he, was the admiral of an Alliance ship at one point, and then before that he got recruited by the Resistance, and that's when they rip out his eyeball and put in a fake eye that's actually a video transceiver, so that the Resistance, who ends up becoming the Browncoats, can see everything that he does while he's working for the Alliance. So he's literally an Alliance spy the entire time that he's working for them. And then it jumps back to before that to like, oh man, I can't even remember now. His name wasn't even Daryl Book, to be honest. Like his original name was something else. He got in a bar fight and killed a guy and stole his identity, because he had to do that, I think, to be able to join the Resistance had him do that so that he could join the Alliance. And not have his old name attached to it. Like it gets really deep going back, and then like the very end of it shows you that, like, as a 10 or 12-year-old child, that his dad was an alcoholic and never took care of him and didn't take care of their family or anything, and so like he ran away from home at a very young age and like just had to like make it on his own through life. Like, I know at one point after he worked for the Alliance, he gets in a bar fight, and then after he beats the shit out of a guy, he looks up and he sees a neon sign for an abbey, and it makes you believe that like that was the moment that he turned his life and like decided to become a Christian or whatever religious philosophy he had. Preacher. Yeah. So that's Shepherd's Tale, by far the best comic in my opinion from all of them. The next comic was Downtime in November of 2010. It was called A Slice of Life in the Day of the Crew, and apparently was a one-off about the crew being stranded on an ice planet. I honestly don't know if I own this one or not. Next up was Leaves on the Wind, which issue 1, issue 2, issue 3, issue 4, issue 5, issue 6. Yeah, issue 6. I know Leaves on the Wind was all 6 of them eventually got put into one trade paperback, which I thought that I owned, but I couldn't find it today, so I don't know what happened to that. But Leaves on the Wind shows the aftermath of the Serenity movie. Now the Alliance is pissed off that somebody made that broadcast and told everybody about Miranda, but a lot of people think that it was just a hoax and that it didn't, like, none of that stuff really happened. So you get to, like, the operative tells them that the Tams aren't, the enemy of the Alliance anymore, but now the entire crew basically is, because the Alliance is trying to find out who did that broadcast and comes after them and all kinds of stuff with that. And then I didn't write this one down. I found it later on, but I have a 3-issue run of comics that were just called Serenity, and I don't really know a whole lot about what the story is for these. I cannot remember. So I do know that they did a 3-issue run of. Do you have these, Jason? Do you remember this?
I do.
You do? Okay.
I don't remember the comic so much, but
okay. But yeah, so I've got the 3-issue run that was just called Serenity. I don't have written down what the plot line was. And then and this is where I fail. In November of 2018, they relaunched a series just called Firefly. This comic book series goes all the way back to the Unification War, and it shows Mal and Zoe meeting each other for the first time. So like they're really the only real characters in it. That was the cover, and then I actually bought the like variant cover that apparently has the whole cast on it. So not entirely sure, but I've never read this. I bought it, I never read it, and that's why I only own the first issue, because I completely forgot to go buy any of the other ones. So I should read that sometime, and I should probably try to hunt down some more of those issues. I don't know if it's still in print. I don't know if it was limited. I don't know anything about that series. Did you read that one at all?
I believe you bought me that first issue.
Oh, I did. I'm sure I did.
Right after you bought that, right after you went to Comic Carnival and bought those, you bought me the #1 issue, and I had every intention of buying the other ones as well, and didn't.
Yeah. So, we failed on that. So
I think Joss Whedon's got a lot of our money. So
that's a fact.
I ended up as far as the movie goes, with us being movie theater managers when it came out, or were you at the time?
No, when it came out? I wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't working at a theater at that point.
I was, and I screened it, obviously.
Pretty sure I came to your screening of it.
And then on opening night, I had Friday off that weekend. On opening night, I paid to watch it.
Oh.
I went to my theater that I worked at, and I paid for me and one of my brothers to watch that movie, just because I wanted to make sure that they, they had some paying customers.
Sure.
And so I don't do that very often. and I was happy to do it. But yeah, like I want to say that movie only made back $40 million, and it needed to hit 80 to get a sequel.
A sequel, okay.
Yeah, so I think it made back its production budget, but it didn't do anything else. So
the next thing I'd like to talk about is what's hanging behind me, and what is also behind you. We both obviously have the 27 by 40 theatrical release poster. Mine has 3 autographs on it. I'm gonna do my 3 first because you far surpass me. You and I believe we got Wash and Kaylee at the same time when they were here in Indiana, right? Yep.
We did.
We did.
You got them on the first day. I got them on the second.
You got them on the second day, okay? Because when I thought that, I was like, I don't remember us waiting in line together, so that makes sense that we got them on different days, the same time they were here.
Yeah, you went on. You had Friday. You took the weekend off, and you went Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I only got Saturday afternoon off. So I went down with you on Saturday, and that's when I got both of them. So.
Did you get to go to the panel while they were here?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So so we went to the panel together.
I got free shit from Alan Tudyk.
From Alan Tudyk. Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot that because you had a question.
He started mimicking what
Nathan Fillion does.
Nathan Fillion does, which is if you go to a Q&A and you ask a question, you get something free.
Yeah.
And so when I went
What'd you get?
I asked the question I asked was I asked Alan Tudyk if he could give us any fun stories from when he did A Knight's Tale with Heath Ledger.
Oh, yeah.
Because this wasn't too long after Heath had passed, I want to say, within like a year or two of him passing, and I was like, hey, I know you worked with him on this. Do you have any fun stories about it? And he was like, no, not really. And then he went, oh, wait, and he told us the story about how Heath was taking a knife, and in between cuts, he was taking this knife and throwing it up in the air and then catching it on its way down either by the blade or by the hilt, whatever, trying to be very careful, but catching it on its way down. And one of the producers came over and was like, we really need you to stop doing that. and then Heath just kind of like looked at everybody and looked back at the producer and he goes, you mean stop doing this? And he threw it up in the air and then he caught it again. And so like I just thought that was kind of a fun little thing to find out about Heath Ledger. So
for sure. So we both got those here in Indiana, and then I flew all the way out to Phoenix, Arizona on my birthday to hunt down Nathan Fillion to get him to sign my poster. I begged him. I waited in line, and I begged him. I said, hey, here's my driver's license. Today is my birthday. Will you write happy birthday on my poster for me? And he looked at me and went, I'm not allowed to personalize anything, and just signed his name and handed it back to me. And it was one of those moments, like, not that it was like a negative experience with him, but like that whole like don't meet your idols thing. It was just one of those things where I was just like, every time I've seen videos of you, you've been badass to people.
Well, the other part of that story that you're leaving out, though, is that you told me that when you went to this Comic-Con in Arizona, that the line to see him was so big, so long, that's why they couldn't do personalizations. Because of the fact that the line was too big. And you said that you waited in line how long?
It was about 2 hours that I waited.
Yeah,
and I got there as soon as they opened the. I think he was only there Saturday. I went out there and I was at the con for the whole weekend. Saturday morning, as soon as they opened the gates, I went straight to go get in his line. I think his signing started at like 1. I'm pretty sure that I went and got in line at 10 o'clock, and I was still 2 hours deep into the line by the time like they started doing stuff. And yes, later on I did hear, because like, I mean, his line was insane. It filled the entire queue and then was just like wrapping around places. Like, they didn't have a large enough queue built for him. That year while I was at Phoenix and he did his Q&A, like not Q&A, like his panel, the Nathan Fillion panel, I literally went and got in line fairly early for that and still didn't make it inside the auditorium because so many other people were in line ahead of me. So, like, yeah, like I did hear rumors later on that like the reason they weren't allowed to personalize anything is because they were literally just trying to get people through as fast as possible. So he literally he did say happy birthday to me when I was trying to play it off that it was my birthday, sign this happy birthday. He was like, I'm not allowed to sign that, but happy birthday. And I was like, man, I guess at least I got that. But it was it was cool to be that close to him. Like he definitely was funny. He was definitely making jokes. I definitely didn't feel like he was being a dick about it, but he was also just so like straightforward about I can't personalize anything. Sorry. Here's my signing. Happy birthday, and then like I just moved on. Like I hope someday to do another panel like or a did you did do VIP the year in Chicago, right?
He did.
You did.
300, I think, or was it 4? It might have been 4. So I spent $300 or $400 to buy the VIP for his experience, and that was mainly because he was the only reason I really wanted to go.
Sure.
He was the only one that I wanted to make sure. I didn't know if I'd ever get to see him again, and I'm trying to find a picture. I should have been more ready for this.
That's fine. Honestly, if you send it to me later, I will make sure it makes it on screen.
So one of my favorite I got to meet him. I got to take a picture with him.
Yep.
He was really nice the entire time.
Oh, you people that pay VIP money and don't wait in line like us lowly people.
Oh, shush. You did that for Stephen Amell.
I think that was the same year.
Yeah, it was.
The same con even.
Yes, it was.
It was.
And you got in line for him like the same time I got in line for Summer Glau, and like you got to go through your line super fast. me and Snow were stuck in that line for Summer Glau for hours.
Yeah.
So I have to give it to you, Shane. If it wasn't for you, I would have never started this, because I remember us talking about it, and you were like, I'm going to get some autographs on my poster, and I was like, that's a really good idea. Like, what will I do with mine besides it just sitting in a plastic frame anyway? So,
well, and let's talk about the autograph you got that I regret.
Well, you were being silly.
I was
before you went to Arizona.
Yes.
So let's see if I can get I can get most of it in here.
Yeah.
Okay. So up here I've got Summer Glau signed.
Yep.
She was one of 3 people that I got at that comic convention at Chicago Wizard World. And that was she signed it, Jason, I can kill you with my brain.
Perfect.
I got Nathan Fillion at that one, and it says Jason, no grenades.
Oh, you got yours personalized. I hate you.
And then where is my down here is, hey Jason, shiny, let's be bad guys, Adam Baldwin.
Was that at that con? Okay.
That was all at the same con.
Yep.
Then I also got when we did here in Indy, we did Alan Tudyk and Kaylee. Oh my God.
Jewel State.
Thank you. Jewel State signed it down here, and it says, hell with this, I'm gonna live. And then Alan Tudyk signed his, Jason, I am a leaf on the wind. Signed his name and then drew an arrow to his cockpit. So
that is the exact same thing he did on mine.
And then let's see.
The last one is the one that I regret the most. We went to a con. We went to a con a week before I was. Oh, go ahead.
So I had 2 more.
Oh,
I just got these last year.
Oh yeah.
the two that I got were at the same con were Morena Baccarin and Sean Mayer.
That's right.
Morena says, and that's not incense. And Sean says, it's okay to leave them to die. And then the one that I have, everybody else, and I'm going to keep it this way. If I'm ever lucky enough to meet Gina Torres, I'm going to have her sign in gold or copper or whatever. But the only one that I have signed in silver is Ron Glass. And it says, Jason, doing the impossible makes us mighty.
Oh, that's awesome.
And Shane, you were very silly.
Yes.
And I told you right afterwards that you were stupid because I would have fronted you this money. But yes, the week before you went to that Comic-Con to meet Nathan Fillion, you were at our Comic-Con with me. You met Ron Glass.
I did.
Super nice guy. Like he was very much a gentleman. What's really weird was it felt almost like he was uncomfortable with the attention when we were like one-on-one with him.
Well, and the really weird thing was like, it wasn't even planned. You and I were just walking around that con, and we looked over, and there was no one in his line.
Yeah.
And you were just like, oh, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to go ahead and go. I'm going to go have him sign this. Like, it wasn't like you were like, I need to go find Ron Glass. We just happened to be walking around, and you were like, oh, well, there's no wait. Like, I'm going to go do this because there's no wait. And I didn't have my poster with me that day, which was part of the reason why I didn't get him to sign it. But it was also because I was literally 4 or 5 days away from heading to Phoenix. I was trying to save all of my money, knowing that I was going to spend a lot of money in Phoenix. And that's why I didn't just have him sign anything randomly, and obviously nobody knows when anybody is going to die. I wasn't expecting to never have another chance with Ron Glass. But yeah, I literally walked up with you. The two of us walked up, no line, went right up to him and his handler, and 5 minutes of talking to him. Like,
yeah, and since nobody was in line, we got to just chat and hang out and talk. And like I said, it felt a little awkward to me.
Yeah.
It almost felt like he wasn't fully comfortable. But then, like, we went to his panel later that day,
and he blew it away.
He had so much more energy, and he was more personable. And maybe he's just not comfortable with the close interaction one-on-one, or wasn't. But yeah, he was a super nice guy, super gentleman-like. Yeah. And it's such a shame that he's gone, but it's one of those things where, like, he was fantastic in that role, and I'm very happy that I got the signature. But
it's one that I know a lot of our other friends are jealous of, because, like, in later years, like, our friend Snow has started collecting the autographs. He bought an art piece that has like when you were a kid and you would do the art thing where it would be a shadow of your face and like somebody else would like draw a line of your face. Like, he's got an artwork that's like that, and it's the profiles of all the 9 main characters, and he gets everybody to sign their signature under their like profile thing. And the fact that he won't ever be able to get Ron Glass on, I think Ron Glass and like it might be Gina Torres. Like, he's only missing like 1 or 2 others.
No, he's got Gina.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
He's missing like 1 other person.
I can't remember who he's missing, but I know that he's got Gina.
Okay.
Maybe it's Nathan that he doesn't know.
No, because I think he got Nathan the same year that you did at Chicago.
Yeah, that would make sense. I don't know. Maybe it's Sean Mayer. I think that might be who it was. So yeah. Because then he might have finished his.
No, because I was just at his house like 2 weeks ago and looked at it, and I know he's missing someone.
Maybe it's Alan Tudyk, because I know that like he was when I went to the Cincinnati Comic-Con last year.
Yeah.
And got Sean and Morena.
He was there
Jewel was also there.
Oh, okay.
And so like all 3 of those are off of his list because he was at that same con. And then he was there when we met Jane or met Alex or Alec Baldwin or
Alec Baldwin.
Adam
Baldwin. Well,
we're
not talking about the Shadow.
He met Adam and Summer that day as well as
and Nathan,
and then he would have gotten Nathan. I want to say he went to like Philadelphia or something to get Gina Torres, or Cleveland or something like that. So, yeah, she's the only one I'm missing. So I'm hoping to at some point. And once that happens, I'm probably going to actually pay to have this like professionally framed in a better situation than it is, and then maybe even insure it, because I'm pretty sure this is the most expensive thing I hang on my wall that's not a television.
Yeah, probably. That's a pretty awesome thing, and you've put a lot of money into it, so it's worth it.
So yeah.
And then I mean the last.
And then you have this awesome shirt.
Oh, your new T-shirt! That's so dope. Well, and speaking of T-shirts, we both have a plethora of T-shirts because we both did the Loot Crate for a year or two. That Loot Crate did.
Thank God we quit when we did, huh?
Yeah, apparently, it sounds like things went pretty downhill after we quit, but they
sounds
did
like the month. Like, what was it? Like the month? Wasn't it a monthly thing?
No, it was
every 2 or 3.
2 or 3. It was like every 2 or 3 months, because I know I was a part of it for like 2 years. So
and you quit once you got the full set.
Yep.
I had to go another month so I could get Kaylee, because I missed out on the first Loot Crate.
The first
so I got
one,
Kaylee, or I missed the first 2, which were Kaylee and Zoe. I bought Zoe online, the statue that came with the Loot Crate, and so then they went back and I got Kaylee the second time when she's in her dress, not in her.
Yeah,
her
I
outfit.
have the Kaylee where she's got the
mechanic.
The mechanic's outfit and the umbrella from the pilot episode.
Yeah.
Parasol,
yeah. So
I do not have the dress one that you have.
So you quit. The dress came out. I quit. And then no more Loot Crates came out, even though they charged people for it.
Yeah, like I remember that becoming a huge fiasco because I, of course, had that like canceler's remorse where I was like, oh, I didn't get that Kaylee that Jason's got. I need it to complete my collection. So I was like, oh, I wonder if I can just go buy that one. And like maybe I can like sign back up for this. But then like I went to their like Facebook page or something and it was literally like so many people saying, you charged me months ago and I've never got my next crate. Never got it. And I'm just like, oh, okay, well maybe Loot Crate doesn't need my money anymore.
Yeah.
So I am happy with my collection of statues that I got. They're all awesome. I've got all 5 of the Pops that they released. I'm hoping that someday they release the last couple of Pops characters that I don't have. River, Simon, Book.
Did they release
Operative.
Those?
I don't. Not that I'm aware of. To my knowledge, they've only ever released the first 5. So like, I hope someday they'll release more characters, do a second wave of them. Because I unfortunately have an obsession with pop vinyls and have a couple hundred of them that I don't need to have, but they make me childhood happy. Okay, I'm gonna pull the plug on that conversation right now. Jason and I talked for about another 10 minutes about a bunch of stuff that honestly doesn't really even matter at all. We just kind of rambled on, and it was really late in the night, early in the morning. We were just kind of both talking away about stuff that really doesn't matter to the episode anymore. So I'm going to tell everybody thank you so much for listening. We appreciate it. It was quite a bit to talk about with the whole Firefly universe. Next week will be As 99 Razzies Go By. It's our 19th episode. Whenever there's a 9 in the episode, we go back to the year 1999. Technically, we're going to the year 2000 because the 99 Razzies were held in the year 2000, much like the Oscars. So we are going to take a look at all of the stuff that won for worst of the year in 1999. Kind of debate a few things. There's some stuff that won for being the worst that I don't agree with. And we'll see what everybody else thinks. We currently have polls up on the Shane Talks Facebook page if you want to throw your 2 cents in about what you think was the worst actor, actress, movie, and on-screen duo from 1999. Feel free to be part of the conversation. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate your time.